Well, Chris, it was only a matter of time. We thought we could get through the last couple of weeks of like mostly focused effort, but alas, we couldn't escape it. We couldn't escape the filler episodes. And at the same time, coincidentally, holy Star Wars news, Batman. Jesus Christ. Disney dropping
the hammer.
The ultimate flex of all flexes this past weekend. People, this is tricky because this is yet another episode of Mando Watch, but at the same time, I feel like there's so much more that we're going to talk about just in general. But, of course, Chris Evanko, Patrick Hubert, myself, Dominic Grizzy, movie nerd, TV nerd, take the hint, Mayfield. That's the hashtag you're going with this week. Guys, we're back. It's the penultimate episode of The Mandalorian Season 2, guys. There was a lot of stuff that dropped this past weekend. How have you been? Man. What are your thoughts overall on Disney once again dropping the hammer and just marking their territory, if you will?
Well, I mean, I can't be too upset with Disney because, like we said on the phone, like last night, they kind of made our jobs a little easier for this whole next year with just the insane amount of content they decided to just unleash on the world yesterday. So I can't be too mad at them. And I honestly do disagree with you when you call this a filler episode. But guys, I think that just means we have a great show for you tonight. Yeah. Now, before we introduce our special guest of the evening, Pat, how you been, man? Thanks for joining us yet again.
Yeah, doing pretty good. Like, I will say that this episode was action packed. It did have something missing, and trust me, I wasn't disappointed by that. So that's a little tease for a later conversation.
You know it's bad when you're watching the whole episode, and at the end you're like, oh shit! I completely forgot that this is the first episode that Grogu was not in at all, and it was.
Oh, you're
and I wondered. I'm like, why was it so good? Why was it so good? That wasn't anything that needed to be drawn out. It's like that was just like by sheer like kind of common sense factor. It's like, oh yeah, he's not in the episode. You kind of figured out from the end of the last episode by the nature of the show. They're like, oh, they're gonna go get Bill Burr this episode. That's exactly what they did. But guys, we have another incredible show for you. But first, Chris brought in another guest that he had told me about, but that I completely forgot about. And then I came on, and I'm like, oh, wait, who's this guy? And then I'm like, oh, wait, I vaguely remember Chris saying that he was going to bring on a guest. So people, without further ado.
Well, hold on. I got to say one last thing about this guy before we bring him in here.
Man, why are you drawing out the introduction process? Let's just bring him in and have him react to it.
Because the people need to know, man. I've been trying to get Roy on the podcast for a long time because listen, we think we know our stuff about Star Wars, but Roy literally knows his stuff, okay? This is a grand master Jedi when it comes to knowledge of Star Wars.
We have a true expert here, is what
we have a true expert in the house tonight, a really nice person, an incredibly talented musician. Everyone, please welcome RoyishGoodLooks to the show. What's going on, Roy?
I am one with the Force, and the Force is with me. Thank you for having me, dudes. I got my lightsaber ready to go. I got my Darth Maul on. We'll be watching you.
Oh, wow.
Right.
Wow.
Whatever he
says, man. That was
Chris,
awesome.
I didn't realize we were getting the guys from fucking binge mode on here. Jesus.
I think we already know who the MVP of this week's episode is.
Yeah, right? I mean, I got my lightsaber in the closet right there, and even they're not as impressive as that. Like, god damn, dude.
Let me just take a minute. This is no joke. This hilt here. This is a custom hilt.
Yeah, I was gonna ask, whose hilt is that? Is that like does that belong to any previous Jedi, or is that like one that you had custom made?
I'm fortunate enough to have a best friend who is just as in love with Star Wars as we all are, and yeah, he's at Disney, and you get to make this is like the Build-A-Bear for lightsabers, so you can like unscrew and like add different crazy components. And this was a gift from my best bud Joe. So thanks, Joe. May the Force be with you.
All right. Well, someone was certainly a very, very happy boy this past weekend. So
that's a good friend.
Yeah. So, Roy, welcome to the show. I'm going to break down exactly how it works.
Thank you.
We're basically at the 5-minute mark. So this is how this episode works. This show happens in 4 segments. Segment 1, we do a recap section where we basically recap what happened in the episode. Section 2, we go through our positives and negatives, what we liked and didn't like about the episode. Section 3, we crown an MVP. So whichever aspect of the episode we thought was the absolute best, be it an actor, a director, a technical component, music, whatever, that's their MVP. And then section 4, how this relates to the overall Star Wars universe. That last segment kind of tends to ebb and flow depending on the episode overall. So without further ado, people, let's get this shit started. Segment 1, the recap. So This episode is entitled Chapter 15, The Believer, directed and written by the only other returning director from last season, that being Rick Famuyiwa, who famously directed episodes 2 and 6 of last season. He only wrote episode 6 of last season, which was famously entitled by many as the Bill Burr episode. And needless to say, well, they hinted at the end of last episode, Bill Burr's Mayfield character was coming back. So, you know what? Let's just bring back the guy who wrote and directed that episode. And let me tell you something. It may not have all been for naught. So the episode opens up, and we zoom in on a prison junkyard plant with Bill Burr's Mayfield. What's called doing some ironworks on some Imperial salvage when he's brought up when a droid comes up to him. It's like prisoner number whatever. There's a lot of Imperial technical mumbo jumbo in this episode. Tells him that he is needed by newly crowned New Republic officer Cara Dune, who wants him for a mission. She brings him up to Slave 1, and down come Fennec Shan, Boba Fett, who Bill Burr chucklingly makes a joke saying, "Hey, you remind me of someone else," before Mando walks down the ramp, and he tells him he needs them. He needs the coordinates. He needs the coordinates from him, from Moff Gideon's ship, because he was a former Imperial officer. And he once again reminds him, "Hey, that was a long time ago. I haven't done that in a while." And he's like, "Hey, man, you do this for us, you might get free the sentence." But of course, they bribe him with the knowledge that everyone in the galaxy seems to either be wanting or just caring for. That's the information. They got the kid. And Mayfield's like, "Oh, man, all right, now I got to help you." So they take off. They head to the planet of Morag, which, it's funny, I heard that name at first, and I was like, "Oh, wait a minute. That sounds really familiar." But I didn't think it was because of anything that happened in Star Wars. And it turned out that I was right, because it wasn't in Star Wars, because Morag is the same planet that the Power Stone is located on in Guardians of the Galaxy. So I'm like, wow, Disney just ripping from their own other properties. Okay, sounds like part of the course. So they land on a planet, and they do an infiltration run. Mando, Gingerin volunteers to go with Mayfield as they infiltrate the Imperial compound on Morag, while Cara and Fennec act as snipers while Boba is piloting their escape craft. They head in, they go through some villages. They're like, "Oh, man." Bill Burr's like, "Oh, man, what's the difference between the Empire and the New Republic? We're all just invaders to them." They manage to fight off some pirates. They get brought into the Imperial craft and hailed as heroes. And then afterwards, they sit down with a very nasty Imperial officer who reminds Bill Burr of some PTSD moments that he had while fighting as an Imperial shock trooper. Bill Burr ends up killing the officer. They end up having to fight their way out after they get the information that they need. It also contains a crucial moment in which Din actually takes off his helmet. And I'm like, okay, so that just confirms my working theory that Pedro Pascal is contractually obligated to take off his helmet at least once throughout this entire show. So I'm wondering, though, how that'll continue if they actually decide to keep using him for future seasons. But then again, if that has anything to do with the announcement that just happened, that may not be a thing going on further. And the rest of the episode is pretty simple. They escape. Bill Burr's like, "Hey, I just needed to get some stuff off my chest." They're like, "Man, it sure was a tragedy that Mayfield died in that explosion." And he's like, "What?" He doesn't get it at first, and then he realizes he's free, so he walks off, and the four of them take off to plan their next move, but not before Mando leaves a message for Moff Gideon saying, "Moff Gideon, I'm coming for you." He's channeling his best Sylvester Stallone from Rambo First Blood Part 2 here. I still have no idea why the Rambo movies are called that way. The Rambo movies are literally titled First Blood, Rambo First Blood Part 2, Rambo 3, Rambo, and Rambo Last Blood. None of that shit makes sense. But so, people, in what might be the shortest recap that I think we've ever accomplished, that was the end of the recap section. Chris, I'm a little bit pissed. You didn't put up the graphics that you made so well. I love those graphics that just like tell you what section is which.
I just wanted everyone to get their little branding going on in the beginning here, you know. So now we'll turn that off and we'll really kick it in. But before we go any further, Roy, you're new to the show. What's been your sort of take on the season so far going forward? Just to get a little background information on where you're coming from, you know.
All right. I mean, dude, I love the show. I don't have too many complaints. And I've been trying to not complain about Star Wars. I think we're lucky to even have any Star Wars. And so I'm trying to stay mostly positive. And dude, it's great. Like the last couple episodes have especially been great with the suspense in the episode of like, oh, I got to see if they make it to the end of whatever mission they're on. They've been doing a good job of keeping me on my seat. The last episode, especially with Grogu on the Seeing Stone, and you're like, are they gonna, whoa, and you know, they end up capturing them. Holy cow, I gotta see the next episode. This last episode did the same kind of thing. You're like, are they gonna deliver this stuff that's gonna blow up? Regardless if it's Star Wars or not, that's keeping me, you know, it's just engaged in that particular one story. You guys were talking about this episode maybe being a throwaway, And I might be in that camp, but I wanted to see if they were going to deliver the thing, if they were going to get away with that Imperial, director or admiral, whoever they were talking to. I wanted to see the next thing. That's all I want from any show. Make me tune in next week. And I think Mandalorian has been doing that amazingly since episode number 1 or chapter number 1, when Grogu made his initial on-screen appearance. So that's kind of my broad take, man. I need to see the next episode. Bring it on.
Well, the one thing I will call you out on, though, before we go, is you're putting words in my mouth, because I didn't say it was a throwaway episode. I said it was a filler episode. Those are two different words right there. They can have the same connotation at points, but they are not at all the same word. One is slightly more palatable. So with that being said, let's move on to positives and negatives. And I want to start with Pat, because last time Pat went last, and he gave me the most surprising thing yet, which that he actually really liked that episode. So I'm going to hear your thoughts on this week. So Pat, start off. What did you think of Chapter 15, The Believer? Dumbest title yet, by the way, but we'll get to that in a little bit.
Yeah, I really didn't know the title until right now, so I'll agree with you. I don't know who was believing. But,
I have no idea who's believing in what. Like, it makes no sense.
Whatever. I thought this episode started off great. I basically took a break from some work, started watching this episode, and it's action packed, right? You got them arriving to the planet. They're basically going on this special sort of a mining transport with some explosive cargo, and these sort of pirates that are probably tied into the locals who are against the Imperials are basically trying to blow up these giant mining trucks. And basically you have the Mandalorian and Bill Burr's character Mayfield sneaking on board one of these to sneak into the Imperial base to get the the coordinates that they need from Moff Gideon. And I thought that was all fantastic. Like another sort of Metal Gear Solid sneak in mission. You got this cool sort of a road chase / battle. Things are blowing up. This is a really fun, enjoyable stuff. And then they got inside the base and they got to the cafeteria and they started having this conversation with this sort of officer. And that's when I hit pause and actually went back to work and got some work done. And then when I was done doing some work, I basically jumped back in and there was more action. So I would say this episode was really good. Except for I thought that particular cafeteria thing was very predictable. As soon as they set up that officer and, we're going to have some sort of sort of mumble under the breath style, confrontation that was going to lead to Bill Burr's character shooting him. I thought that predictability sort of, took me out of it. And, it's I got back into it when the action picked up again, but I feel like there was a little bit of a lull in the middle of this episode. And I guess my favorite real thing about this episode is it was a complete story without Grogu. And I don't think you need the puppet in every episode. So this is definitely proof that Grogu can kind of do his own thing and they can still have a pretty good episode.
The one thing I will
Pat, I'm going to miss listening back to this show. I'm going to have to listen back to the show to get the way you something about the way you describe Grogu, always calling him the puppet with that intense plosive on the P is just so disrespectful. There's so much anger behind that. It's almost like you're becoming a Sith right? The more you speak about him. So I'm going to miss that. It's very sad. We only have, 2
one
weeks
episode left.
Yeah, one left. Yeah, we're in
This is episode 7. This is the penultimate point, dude. Second to last.
Yeah, true. And you know what, Dom? So we'll save us for last in this one if it's all right. And I think we throw it to Roy here and get Roy's positives on the episode. Why don't we take it from there, Roy? What were some of your positive takeaways from this episode?
Dude, positives? That paint job on Boba Fett's armor, man. That is the best that dude has ever looked until you have a figure of him. I got a Pez of him up in the corner here. I'd grab it, but I'd knock so much crap over getting it. He only looks that good when you buy him in a figurine. Dude looks awesome. Still has the pockmark in the helmet, though. Couldn't fix that. That's extra, I guess. But he's not even in it. He doesn't really do anything in the episode. He's kind of running comms or whatever. So kind of surprising they set him up as such a badass. He's not really that prominent in it. But Mando, He trades in his Mandalorian armor for the crummy, whatever those tank drivers are. They don't even get cool armor. Those guys are boring, man. The short
They're like the lowest tier stormtrooper you could ever imagine. I would
they're
say
called juggernauts, aren't they, or something like that? They're
That's
named
what
like a
stormtroopers-
very specific name.
I don't pay attention to the specific names. It's like, okay, those guys drive the tanks, and those guys are droids,
Right.
and those guys fly the TIEs and get shot down. Well, they only have one thing in common. They all suck at shooting. Well, two things in common. They all suck at shooting, and they all die easily.
Yeah, I'm surprised they
Armor's
weren't
all
like.
And their armor's all made of plastic.
I thought that admiral was going to be like, you guys are too good to be the stormtroopers driving this tank.
I think he did. He kind of did like shoot like a subtle jab at them when he said, "Oh, you guys are the only transport that made it back."
It was going to go one of two ways. Either we're going to celebrate, let's grab a drink, or I don't think you're stormtroopers. Which brings me back to my point. Mando, he doesn't need the armor, man. He doesn't need the armor, dude. He's still a good soldier. They show the armor cracking. I think they made a good point to show that he's like, oh, man, I'm not totally safe right now. He ups the ante, still takes on the pirates. So I thought that was cool. Without his, Iron Man suit, he was still holding his own. What I didn't like about this episode, if we're going positive negatives, dude, I'm sorry, but Bill Burr, he makes it an SNL sketch, in my opinion. He plays the role of the anti-hero. We got Mando, he's serious. Bill Burr, comic relief. I get it. But he has such a big personality, and I love him in Breaking Bad. His comedy, I'm not a huge fan, but I enjoy it. Him in Star Wars is very parody to me. He says the joke about, oh, we got to file our TPS reports. Dude, that's an SNL bit right there. That's like Kylo Ren undercover boss sketch. So I'm not sold on Bill Burr, and it's funny that he's just out now. And they're like, oh, yeah, he died, and we're never going to see him again. But, he did his thing. So what do you expect? He's going to be Bill Burr. If I had to complain about something, he's a little over the top.
Fair enough. Yeah.
Only thing I'm gonna say to that is I disagree with you on it being better than the Kylo Ren sketch. The Kylo Ren sketch is better than this for sure, but I disagree with you on this being a sketch. Chris, what were you gonna say?
Oh yeah, no, I guess I'll jump in and side note, I think that Kylo Ren SNL sketch is it's pretty top tier.
Fantastic.
SNL's very hit or miss for me, but I think they really nailed that one. But so I guess I'll start off with the positives. I do enjoy how they work. It's like one of the shorter episodes, and I guess I'll have to get used to the fact that you're not going to really understand the amount of time you're going to sit down each week with The Mandalorian. Sometimes it's going to be a little longer. Sometimes it's going to be a little shorter. But I do have to say, since episode 2, whatever amount of time I've been given has been enjoyable. And Pat, look, I get it. That was, I guess, a bit of an abrasive scene. I didn't have as much issues with it as you did, but I at least have since episode 2, I'm not even looking at my phone, like I'm invested. So even if I did get a little sad, because I've been enjoying it so much, when I saw the 33 minutes or whatever it was, I was still hooked, and it flew by just the same as the 50-minute episode. That was awesome, flew by the pilot. So that's one thing I do have to give them on the positive side is there isn't really a clear structure in regards to like the filmmaking and the writing for the length, getting people that uniformity that we're all so used to, but they're making it work, which to me sort of trying to because I agree with a lot of what you guys had said, so I'm trying to add other things as well that I think were a little more meta in regards to making this episode efficient. But yeah, I mean, it's without the child being in it, it was equally as enjoyable, if not more. And I think it's for the reason that everyone, like Pat said last week, now has a purpose, has a role. So yeah, Boba Fett was a huge player in last week's episode, and we really got to see who he was as a character, and his actions enriched his experience. But now we kind of got more Boba Fett in the sense that he can be a team player because he has a role, he has an assignment. He's the getaway car. And, Fennec and Cara Dune are out there and they're running sniping and they're on like the comms to Boba. And it's like everyone had a purpose. So when they would cut to these characters who in season 1, in my opinion, when you had like Grief and Cara alone, it was a little boring. It's like, oh, we're just waiting for Mando to come back to push the plot along. But they were all integral parts of keeping this narrative going. And yeah, it's another one of those super easy stories to write. I mean, they're not reinventing the wheel here. It's just your typical like get in, get out type mission. But it was well done and it was exciting and it gripped me. And my only real negative is not Bill Burr in the sense of his performance. I actually kind of like how I feel like he doesn't give a fuck about the Star Wars universe, and so he's not going to play this hyper Star Wars character. He's just like, look, man, my agent got me here, and you want me or not? Because I can at least read the lines and read them pretty well. Like, I actually enjoy what he brings to the character. My only complaint, though, is how they just let him go, and he didn't even ask to, like, get off the planet. Like, he's clearly going to show up again next time. So it's just, like, it's so obvious the way that they left him, and he's going to be, I think he's going to be like the in CW, they have that Adam character before they came out with Legends of Tomorrow. He would hop along all the different shows and just appear for like different arcs. I feel like he's now the floater of the Mandalorian universe, which I think is a bit of a corny, like old school network type trope, and that's what I don't like about it. But I didn't hate him as much as I did in the first season. Dom knows I was not a fan. He actually grew on me a lot this episode. But Dom, dude, where's your head at with all this?
I'm gonna agree with you on that because I repeatedly pointed out that episode that he was in that first season was only a touch better than the preceding two episodes because it was slightly entertaining. But I'm not gonna lie, he grew on me this episode, man. I really like what they did for him in this episode. He was easily one of the highlights. It's funny, this episode when it started, I'm like, okay, so this basically confirms everything that I thought about this going in, which is that this is gonna be the next filler and this is gonna be the next side mission that they have on their way to rescuing Grogu from Moff Gideon, and they're going to need Bill Burr. The only thing that kind of depresses me about the ending is the fact that Bill Burr won't be back and that he is going to be like the Hondo of this show now, and that he is going to be kind of the floater. I don't necessarily mind that because I'm like, hey, you know what? Bill Burr is very entertaining, and you know what? He's a gotten talent. So as long as he has somewhere to show up, and he does, and the episodes aren't like last season, then I'm good with that. Other than that, I really like this episode. Again, I love the simple smash and grab heist-like episodes. Those are, again, it was my favorite part about episode 3. It's what got me through the Bill Burr episode last season. Like, I like missions where, what's it called? You know, they have to get into a place and they have to get out and the stakes are super high and they have to shoot through a bunch of bad guys. It's really old school. It's really old-fashioned, and I enjoyed that. And I also like how this episode, in addition to being probably the most Lucasian, was also definitely the most Spielbergian with like that armored truck fight with the pirates. That was like right out of Last Crusade. All of that, like right down to the running out of laser bolts with the blaster and then chucking it at the bad guys. That was great. Yeah, and as far as the rest of Bill Burr's arc goes, like I said, the rest of the characters are pretty much secondary. It really is about Mando and Mayfield in this one. Mando, I think that I like is that even though it's subliminally about him, what this episode says, just like with him, like the fact that he's so willing to take off his armor now, it shows like, okay, Bo-Katan's words, they've gotten to him. He understands that like, okay, his armor is not his life now. His care for this kid is his mission now. And the fact that he's actually willing to do that before they're pulled aside by the obvious Imperial officer is what's it called? It's pretty commendable if you ask me. And then just as far as Bill Burr goes, like I said, Pat, it honestly kind of depresses me that you didn't like that scene where they're in the cafeteria and talking with the Imperial officer because, oh man, that's where Bill Burr came to shine. That's like, okay, his training with Apatow paid off. Like, he knows what he's doing here. Like,
I think my main thing is that once they kind of arrived at the station and he sort of like leaves the cafeteria and he's like, oh my God, I know that guy. I think the whole thing was predictable from start to finish, and that's why I didn't like the cafeteria scene. Is like it's just I saw it coming. It was exactly what I expected it to be, and it just sort of dropped the energy. Like you're talking about these action sequences of fighting the pirates, and then all of a sudden it's like, oh hey, did you want that predictable scene? Here it is.
Yeah, because it's the equivalent, if we're comparing this to Last Crusade, it's the equivalent of Indy punching the Nazi captain out of the window of the Zeppelin and then doing the no ticket line. It's hilarious, and it's also like a really awesome moment of comedy because I don't know about you, all I said was after that scene where Bill Burr pulls out the gun and shoots him, I'm like, first of all, Dave Filoni and Favreau finally got to do what Lucas screwed himself out of with that dumb fucking Han edit. But not to mention the fact that they made Tarantino proud. In that scene, they were like, okay, this is literally the definition of conversation. It's building. You think you know where it's going to go, but you know, like I honestly didn't legitimately know how that scene was going to go. And then when he pulls out the gun and just shoots him in the middle of like that entire room of people, I'm like, cool, like let's go. And I liked how this was kind of like a reckoning moment for Bill Burr. I liked how it was a really interesting character moment for Mando. And I liked that it was a filler moment that didn't completely suck overall. I do have negatives, but like I'll get to them. Like Chris, what did you want to say?
Yeah, no, I wanted to sort of continue on what you were saying. I agree with both you and Pat, and here's how I agree with both of you at the same time. I agree with you, Dom, in the sense that it was a really well done scene, but I also could not help but think to myself, what are the chances? What are the chances for two reasons? One, that he just can't go back to his vehicle and put his helmet on. Like the helmet's just sitting in there the whole time. He's like, he's going to see my face. It's like, okay, dude, take the 10 steps back to your tank, go put your helmet on, then walk back in there up to the console and you'll be totally fine.
It's the jetpack of this episode.
Yeah, it's the jetpack of this episode. And I'm kind of sick of those objects being in play. But
It's a really
also,
dumb storytelling trope.
what are the chances that in that base of hundreds of people, that dude happens to be sitting there at lunch on break at that exact point in time? And also, how is it that the whole galaxy he's stationed at this one base? I mean, there are some, and Roy, let me know what you think about all this type of stuff, but I feel like they give themselves a lot of easy outs in this show.
This is why I love the internet, because this is what the internet has turned us into.
Dude, that's writing,
and
though.
watchers and critics. Is it though? Because writers have made like a lot of comments about how they're trying to like avoid these dumb cliches now. It's like cliches,
hindsight, bro. Hindsight is
dumb writing
2020, man.
Hindsight
It's
of what though?
easy to
Hindsight of
rewrite
what
it.
though? That doesn't make sense. It's like, bro, if it's clearly a problem that people called you out on in your last episode, and you're doing the same shit in the next episode, like,
Dude, it's already written and produced, man. What do you expect? Do you ever like write something and it sucks a week later when you read it? All the time.
These are easy mistakes to fix, though. It's not that difficult. Like,
So, Roy, they don't bother you as much then?
Well, no, they do. They do, but you have to try and see past it if you want to enjoy it. I do struggle with this. I hate this stuff too. Jetpack in the last episode. What the hell, dude? You like use the jetpack for every like get out of jail free card, and now you're not using it. Go get it, bro. But they set that up in the writing. He was like, no jetpack. Boba knew that was going to be a thing. So you pick and choose those beats. And I'm not a film writer. I don't know shit about writing stories. That's what I assume. And you gotta forget about that a little bit. But I want to back Pat up a little bit, because that scene with the Admiral, it did kind of drop off in pace a little bit. And it showed that Bill Burr's character, Mayfield, is kind of useless there. He's like, nah, I'm out, bro. Peace. Like, we got you out of jail for this, man. Go in there and do it. Or you can go back to Junk World. And he's like, nope, he's going to see me. I'm out. You got to do it. You got to do it. And what happens? Mando has to pick up his slack. Why the hell did we even hire you, bro? I should shoot you, man. I'm trying to get Grogu back. Are you kidding me? Get in there. I don't know why they thought they could trust Mayfield at all to begin with. Why did they pick him? We need a sharpshooter. Wasn't he a sharpshooter? He didn't shoot shit in this episode. He didn't want to help out with Mando, and Mando was able to get the information on where the ship was without him. And then, yes, he does kind of come back and save Mando when the officer's like, hey, what are you doing here, man? What's your name? And Mando freaks out, which is not very Mandalorian. He doesn't have his helmet, so maybe that's throwing him off his game, but he had like no plan B there when he knew his face had to be visible. So there's some character development. But then what does Burr do? He screws it up again. He shoots the guy and puts Mando in another bad position. And you guys said they let him out at the end of the episode. They make a lot of poor decisions with Mayfield. I don't like to be so negative, but they didn't need him at all for this mission. Wow. So totally side story. Then it changed from being the chase scene to that weird kind of passing of the floppy disk. We got to get past the boss. That was weird. And we didn't need Mayfield for it.
Wow.
So,
Chris and I thought we were nitpickers. Oh my God.
I am one with the Force, and the Force is with me.
Wow, way to pick apart the entire plot of the episode, which again, I will agree with you, was just a ploy to get Bill Burr back in the show and make him the resident floater.
Cameo.
Because here's why it frustrates me, okay? I actually thought it was a really cool scene where Bill Burr flies off the handle. I like getting that sort of world building on Star Wars. I like hearing about the fact that someone in the ranks of the Empire has a guilty conscience and defects.
He all of a sudden cares, though. He all of a sudden cares. It kind of comes out of nowhere.
His
character has a literal get out of jail free card.
But since we're talking about that specific scene, you guys are right. I agree with both of you guys in regards to that. But I enjoyed that scene. I just thought it felt really crammed in the middle. It felt forced, but it was cool if you look at it on itself. And I just think this show is still, unfortunately, it feels like they're learning so much as they go, and they still haven't fully locked it in. I'm just thankful that season 2 is better than season 1. And if you've noticed lately, Dom, I'm trying to be a little less scrutinous on this for the sake of my stress, not to get too freaked out. But
I apologize. I'm sorry.
Oh no, dude, it's totally, you raise valid points.
Devil's advocate here.
And we shouldn't be, so forgiving on it, especially since it's Disney. And I always say they have all the resources to, avoid these kind of nitpicks. I mean, if there was ever a company that could, we're in Christmas time, right? Make a list and check it twice. It's Disney, who could cover their P's and Q's, but they just seem to not do that. And it's frustrating because I don't think this episode was quite a filler episode, but I think it certainly could have been way more than it was. So let's turn it over to Dom now, because he's brought that up quite a few times. So let's get sort of your reasoning behind that, Dom, and then we'll sort of unpack it from there,
Well, it's just by its simple nature of the episode. Like, I will say that this season has certainly been better with its filler episodes than last season, with the exception of the spider episode, obviously. But, yeah, I mean, like I said, it's just the difference is that the thing about filler is that it's okay when it actually services itself into the plot of the story. And the thing about last week's is that last season felt like such a distraction from the main storyline that by the time we got to it, it's like, oh my God, we spent so much time off of these side missions. It's like we almost forgot about the main tension. Here, with the exception of that second episode, the filler episodes are filled very evenly and actually mixed in with the plot well, much better than last season. I think the difference being, though, and the reason why I term that this is such is because it does still fulfill the dictionary definition of, okay, we're not playing into the main story. We're going on this side mission that will inevitably get us to the main story. But as far as kind of the nitpicks being towards the egregious nature of it, I guess those are true. I can't necessarily disagree with those, but at the same time, if I'm looking at this as like a Bill Burr solo piece in the middle of all this Mandalorian craziness, then like I actually don't hate it, because I think this is kind of my version of Pat's episode 2, where just the storytelling in and of itself was so good and the action was so good, and I was just so entertained by this just being like a solo half hour of television that it's just not as much on my mind with the nitpicks. It's funny because I do have negatives, but like I said, the negatives don't really have anything to do with the actual episode or really just the show in general. My negatives are the fact that Disney dropped 30 plus fucking spin-off titles that they're going to do for Star Wars. And I'm like, Jesus. First of all, like, hopefully if they're smart, they won't like do them like multiple projects a year, but it's like, Jesus, give us one thing at a time to enjoy. We were finally just starting to get to enjoy the show, and this show is finally seeming to overcome the pitfalls. And it's like, nope. And the worst part is next season of the show is probably going to be the last season now, because they're like, shit, we just got so many new projects that are going to seem new. Why do we need to keep continuing one overall story? So again, that doesn't really have anything to do with this episode. My negatives for this episode were really minuscule, if and where they were, especially because out of the 3 episodes that Fami has directed for the show so far, this is probably my favorite of the ones that he's directed. But yeah.
Fair enough. No, Pat, let's turn it over to you, man. I want to get everyone's take on this. Did you find that this episode was more of a filler? And if so, why? And if not, why?
So, just listening to everyone speak today, it's kind of clicking in my mind that this show is not designed for us, the people that are watching week to week. This is really designed for the binge watcher in mind. And so, like, the fact that we're watching it episodically 1 week at a time, I think we're at a disadvantage because, if you're binging it, you could watch this episode and move on to the finale and boom, you're good to go. So I think that was the benefit of me watching the first season. I binged it all pretty much in one weekend. And, it's like, yes, there was some up and downs, and, probably like half or less of the episodes were really good in the first season. I would say that, it just continues the trend where each season seems to be probably better if you just binged it all at once. And I wonder if that's the overall strategy, specifically with the amount of Star Wars shows that are coming up. Hey, we're just going to create a bunch of content, and we're going to create really this huge sort of, 2020 and beyond Star Wars universe, and it's bingeable. You don't have to watch it when it gets released. You can sort of, take years off from Star Wars and get around to it whenever you want. And I think that's the strategy. And I think that's sort of what leads to sort of story decisions like the one that we saw here in this episode. So maybe the believer is those that believe that they're going to enjoy binging all this Star Wars content.
Maybe that's not. That's a way to stretch that title out. I enjoy that. That's about as, and no offense, Pat, that's about as, strong as the writing in this episode. But yeah, Roy, man, where are you in the filler or not filler for the penultimate episode here?
Man, Pat's hitting on a lot of good stuff there. The whole like Netflix binge era. Like if you watch it all at once, totally different experience than, hey, we're going to watch it and we're going to talk about it on a podcast for an hour about all the stuff that was messed up in that episode that they could have done better. And you build an expectation week to week, and you want it to like, you expect Star Wars to somehow save the world, you know? And it's just a TV show. So when you binge it, it's almost better because you're like, it's over and done with, you know? You eat the McDonald's, it's like great in the first 5 minutes. Like 20 minutes later, you start feeling like shit because you're like, I shouldn't have had that, you know? So when you space it out, you know, it's easier to nitpick, more fun packed together. I won't say it was filler because, like you said, each individual story is like kind of self-contained. Like you can still enjoy that one story, but I will say that I feel like we're coming up on the end of the season. This has to be like the second to last episode or so. I don't know for sure.
It is. Exactly. It is.
I thought it was going to be a bigger push to like the end scene wouldn't have been him saying, we're coming for you. Weren't they coming for you last episode? We're still coming for you. But now we know where you are. Boba Fett, you are like the most badass bounty hunter in the galaxy. You didn't have a tracking beacon. You could have thrown on that ship, bro. I thought you were the best, man.
Yeah.
Where was the tracking from? Every other Star Wars, they track people. They could track through light speed a couple years from now. Come on, Boba Fett. He was right there. I got to go back down. They're Imperials. He's all of a sudden scared of them. Come on, Boba. So I have big expectations, and I would say my expectations maybe not were completely met. But that's just because we're like entitled millennials that like want it. Give it to me now. And it's still pretty good. If you binged it, if you wait to watch it, it's probably going to be a little bit more satisfying unless you can turn your brain off and just kind of like enjoy it for the little story it is. Last point, they make this a video game. Best Star Wars video game there possibly could. These are great levels in a game, man. Go get the red key. Now you need the yellow key. You know, you're good to go.
Yeah,
Mandalorian video game, I'm in.
I feel that. I feel that a lot, actually. Jedi Fallen Order was pretty good, but that could give it a run for its money. Yeah, I don't know. I think in the whole filler, not filler debate of the night, I would say that to me, what I couldn't help but think while watching this episode was Disney went to Filoni and Favreau and the rest of the creative team were like, hey, we're ordering 8 episodes again. And they were like, shit, we only have 7. Okay, Bill Burr.
Yeah.
Can we get him? If we can get him, we can make this happen. So we're going to put that last little complication before we get to the final battle. And it was fine. Like we were focused, at least. If you guys remember last season, I felt like there wasn't a general focus really throughout the entirety of the show. Not every character had a purpose. Like Pat, the best thing you said in the entire series, I think the best thing that was said was when you said last week, like it was more interesting. And even though the writing wasn't that good, because everyone at least had a function and a purpose that enriched the story experience. So at least we have that. And the last point I want to raise, where I would say that, yes, it's filler, but at least it feels like it's informed filler. And this is, I guess, more on the unfortunate side, because I want to touch upon what Dom said with the whole like Disney announcing like the future of Star Wars and seemingly using the Mandalorian as a conduit to like sort of help ease that in and get people on board with the new television universe of Star Wars. Man, if they throw this away, like you said, next week, then this whole thing is filler. I don't even care if this has some crazy overarching meaning with Baby Yoda potentially being like a descendant of Yoda and Yaddle, or if Luke's out there. It just seems like such a waste of the fan base's time after we've been through so much nonsense. And I guess that might be a little hint or a nudge to a later segment here we have on the show. But if they do that, then everything's filler.
Yeah.
And that's kind of why I bring that up.
Yeah.
And it was
now you understand my problem.
I do.
Because I'm like, yeah, because I'm like, I want what I watch to have actual meaning behind it. And like that's what made Game of Thrones so special, is that if this is basically taking Game of Thrones place like the water cooler show of the moment, it needs to have some sort of extra meaning behind it. And like there's a reason why Game of Thrones both torpedoed itself the way that it did, and that like every spinoff, they already announced the second spinoff of that show after the first one already got canceled. And I'm like, okay, this one is definitely not happening. And it just makes me really mad because I'm like, okay, they're just going to use this as a springboard and just be like, okay, here's a Star Wars thing for this. Here's a Star Wars thing for this. Here's a Star Wars thing to this. Like, Star Wars is special when it comes every once in a while. Star Wars is not special when it's thrown at us all at once. Like, that's part of the reason why the films failed, is because they were doing all this shit. And we're like, guys, we were so inundated with Star Wars content. And I don't want that to happen again because it's going to just completely devalue what it is that we have, you know?
Yeah.
And it's weird because that doesn't necessarily have anything to do with the show in and of itself, but it's more so, once again, a negative towards Disney. And Disney, I feel like, overplaying their hand. I mean, I can't fault them. Again, they have to do this for their business and for their bottom line because the economics of the world right now are kind of putting them in a really difficult place. But again, I'm sorry. I'm a selfish viewer, and I only care about the stuff that I watch. That's all that I care about. Disney, I could care less about your bottom lines and everything. Go make your theme parks and your memes and your Baby Yoda toys and sell them as you need, but keep the shit away. I just want to watch The Mandalorian, and I don't want to have other shit interfere with it because I think it's a good show, and I really like it because it's different from the stuff that we've gotten before, and it's an interesting, of-the-moment type of show to watch. And I also think that, if anything, again, I think the idea of it being week to week is still in its favor. I mean, it's another one of those awesome shows that it's like you could watch piece by piece, or you can binge it completely, and you can get, I feel like, the full experience either way. So I don't necessarily subscribe to that idea that, it's a better binge than it is week to week.
I think I'm with you on that, Dom. Because I think that we've been watching it week to week and we've been enjoying it thoroughly. At least I know that I have. And so it's one of those things where you got to think about it in this new age. And especially with the recent news of, Warner Brothers announcing their whole slate, either in theaters or on streaming. If you're uncomfortable with going in person, it's like, it's changing. The industry is changing, and this is more of the old model, but I think it's working for it, the week to week approach. But guys, before we jump into MVP, does anyone have any more positives or negatives to air out in regards to this episode?
Nope.
Cool.
I think I have a confession to make.
Oh, okay.
I think this is a negative in which I never thought I would say, but the puppet probably should have made an appearance in this episode, even though I was happy not to see the puppet. Story-wise, go with me, Dom. Story-wise, you're setting up. This is the second to last episode. You need to set up that stakes for the confrontation in the final thing. The whole kind of hologram of the Mandalorian sort of, complaining to Moff Gideon. That's not enough to hype up the end. I think you really need Moff Gideon like torturing the kid or something, and really just
really getting into some hostile stuff.
So does this come from the editing in regards to maybe that scene from last week that ended the episode and the scene from this week that ended the episode? Switch them.
Woo!
Yeah, you nailed it, right?
It might have been nice to be in this episode.
I think it worked.
Yeah,
I think it's playing into what Pat's saying. I think it worked, but
I don't know. I think the main thing is make the thing at the end, do some eviler stuff, and basically it's going further into the dark side, and the Mandalorian has to get there faster. You want that sort of tension to bring us into the story, and I'm not happy with Grogu. I hate the puppet. I can't get over it. But, I think that's what you went all in on. You really need to sell the final episode, and we need to see something happening to that child a little more than him just, going on the wild side. This isn't, Major League with Charlie Sheen, and, he's just a bad boy all of a sudden. I think show him
reference.
Do some, bad stuff.
You just brought up like a dream of mine, which is that I'm like, dude, if Charlie Sheen can play the president in Machete 2, we can have Charlie Sheen be a Star Wars character.
Just put some green makeup on Charlie Sheen.
Hashtag bring Charlie Sheen.
Awesome.
Hashtag bring Charlie Sheen back. I just saw a clip today for Wall Street Money Never Sleeps where Charlie Sheen comes back for one scene to confront Michael Douglas, and it's the best scene in that whole movie. And I've never seen that movie, and that should already tell you something. Yeah. So
criminally underrated actor, in my opinion.
Yes, I agree.
But,
I agree with that.
Pat, you know what? Good point. I don't necessarily agree with it, but you made your case well. With that being said, guys, shall we move into the
MVPs?
Let's do
MVPs of the episode. So I'm going to go real quick with this. It's Bill Burr, Mayfield. There are a lot of different choices. I did also want to give a shout out real quick to Joe Chill, actor from Batman Begins, Richard Brake, as that Imperial commander who Mayfield shoots. He also had a really funny cameo in the first Kingsman movie where he date raped all three of the agents in training and then left them tied to a rope on a train track in the training montage. He's a really good character actor, and every time I see him pop up, I'm like, where have I seen that guy before? And then I look him up. I'm like, oh, that's Joe Chill. Okay. But yeah, so Bill Burr, I think that for somebody who was a joke in last season and like the most obvious use of a celebrity cameo that I've ever seen, I think they actually like really used it well. When we're first introduced to him in this episode, he's a little battle worn. You can tell he's like been through some shit. He's looking to repent a little bit. And the fact that this episode kind of gave him such, that dramatic catharsis that we didn't even know that he needed, I think is what saved this episode from being just another filler episode. So that's why I'm going Mayfield. Bill Burr is my MVP of this episode.
Yeah, you know what? Very, very good choice. You made your case very well. I'll go last here, and we'll throw it to our guest, Roy. Man, Roy, who would your MVP of this week's episode? And just so you know, sometimes we've picked the directors, we've picked the costume crew, so it doesn't just have to be a character. Whatever your heart's telling you, man.
Are we talking like production, writing wise, or like in story in the show?
Everything, both.
Whatever you think was the number one thing that worked in this episode above all.
Above all, oh man, this is a big question. I'll go with what my gut was going to tell me
Sure.
before I heard all the stipulations. Screw all that. I'm going to go off the rails here. I'm not in. You have to do it. They're going to see my face. It's got to be, dude, the TIE fighters, man, that came in. They saved the day, man. They would have blown up. They were going to be overtaken. They were having some trouble with those pirates. Also, dude, how many stormtroopers are on that planet? Where were they beforehand? You had TIE fighters and like an army of stormtroopers not guarding the thing, and there's pirates on the planet?
I said this before. I literally said this before. I'm like, only this show could ever have me laughing at stormtroopers getting their faces smashed in last episode to cheering for and actively rooting for stormtroopers and TIE fighters that came to back them up from the pirates. Only in this show.
It was cool to see the stormtroopers celebrating. I also think it would have been dope if like Mando had to fight alongside of stormtroopers and like use the one as a shield or something. He was like, screw these guys, but he's still in the armor. But TIE fighters saved the day, man. They're the MVPs. Without the TIE fighters, that Rodarian, whatever it was.
Ryderium.
Yeah, sure. Coaxium. That stuff would have blown up, man. They would have been gone. TIE fighters for the win.
Yeah, I feel that. Pat, go ahead, man. Jump in.
Oh, okay. This is a close runner-up, but I think going off of what Roy said about the TIE fighters, I think a potential candidate for MVP is Boba Fett's supplier because, he's using that bomb that blew up the TIE fighters.
Yeah, that was
he's shooting off these rockets all the time. I was about to say, that was a throwback to the prequels right there. I'm like, yes, this show knows its history. This show knows its history. Yeah, how does Boba Fett supply his weaponry? And whoever supplies it must be a rich person. But anyway, the serious most valuable player, I think, is really Pedro Pascal's facial expressions. When he takes off the helmet and he basically is embodying the like scared man-child that the Mandalorian really is. And he sort of like he feels so exposed and so like nasty. The world is so big to him. Like the world is so big beyond the helmet. And I think it's written right there on his face. And like, he just doesn't really know how to act without the tough, armor to protect him. And I think I love that visual. And I think they do it so well in the show. And, this particular actor is I've seen him just be like a badass in almost everything, like, Narcos and, Game of Thrones and everything. And he's basically doing this sort of like macho kind of Western character. And then when he takes the helmet off, he's this like sensitive, like, I had a traumatic like background and like, I don't really know how to fit into the world. And it's weird that you have these sort of delicate moments that come up in the show. And I think that's really sort of really telling to the character and hopefully the depth of the character. Maybe we should get a little more of the history. Like I know Moff Gideon knows about this character as we found out in the end of season 1, like he knows sort of the back history. Is that going to come up in the season finale? And really, we find out that Moff Gideon is like his grandpa or something. I don't know.
No.
Oh,
this
man.
is not the way. This is not the way.
Grand Admiral Thrawn. Oh my God!
I'm just
you gotta calm down. Roy's gonna reach through the camera and force choke you.
It was a cheap joke, but I think that there has to be something from the past coming in, hopefully to play in the next episode.
Pat, did you not hear what Kylo Ren said?
Of that issue. What?
Did you not hear what Kylo Ren said? He said, "Let the past die. Kill it if you have to."
Yeah,
but which is ironic because the show pays perfect homage to pays perfect homage to the prequels. Chris, what is your MVP for this episode?
Yeah, so my MVP is this guy, Rick
Famuyiwa. Hell yeah.
Himself, because I thought, even though it was obviously, we guys have spoken about the purpose that this serves towards the overall narrative and how we kind of felt it was sort of stretching it thin just to fulfill that 8-episode order from Disney. I thought he did a really good job in so many different ways. There was that homage to the classic train robbery Western feel when those pirates were attacking that tank they were on. And if this is rooted in a Western, I think that it was really well done. And they Star Warsified it in a way that was pretty interesting. And it kind of really helped to further show Mando's characters, sort of like last week with Boba, where his physical actions sort of helped enrich who he was, where he doesn't need that armor. Like Roy said, he's a badass either way. He's a good soldier. And maybe that's something that he has to get over personally. And so the fact that I can think about that is, I give that to the director there, that I can ask that question. And, lastly, I got to see the Imperial or the Empire, soldiers sort of have like camaraderie. They were cheering when that one ship that made it get in there. They were like, you did a great job, man. Like, they have personalities, and it's not just Finn, who is one of the, former stormtroopers that has character and charisma and is a human being. And I thought that was really interesting to sort of see that, just like any other military rank or something, the people you serve with, you form a bond with, and they were, lifting each other up in a way that was very not the Empire. But at the same time, obviously we were inside of an Imperial base. And I thought what he did to build the world and enrich the overall Star Wars experience, which I've been wanting in this show, and out of this, let's travel to the far reach of the galaxy with The Mandalorian. He achieved what I've kind of always wanted from this show. And yeah, I think this is the best of his 3 episodes he's directed, but I don't think any of his episodes were anything to shy at either. So Rick Famuyiwa, that's my MVP.
Definitely. All right. So with that being said, those are our MVPs of the episode. So now, people, we move on to the last segment of the show, the effects on the galaxy. So unlike the last couple of episodes, this episode, there's not too much to talk about simply because of the focus and the nature of it. It's mostly Bill Burr and certain other Imperials. There aren't any really notable Imperials to talk about. And again, all the major stuff as far as like the Darksaber, any of the extended Star Wars lore, there wasn't really any of that to be found in this episode. But the one thing that I did find of note, and Chris, I think you're actually going to be able to take more of this than out of this than me, is there was one little reference that I'm like, okay, this actually sounds kind of familiar. The planet itself, Morak, that sounded familiar until I find out that was a rip from Marvel. But I found out that the term that Bill Burr dropped when they were talking with the Imperial officer, Richard Brake's character, the Operation Cinder. I did a little bit of research. I found out, that's a reference to Star Wars Battlefront 2. The 2017 game. That was actually apparently a battle that was fought in it. Yeah, I have the summary pulled up right here, which said, so there's one point where Admiral Versio sends Iden and Hask to an Imperial shipyard over Fondor to protect Moff Raid's Star Destroyer, the Dauntless, which hosts experimental satellites vital to the success of Operation Cinder. The Dauntless comes under attack from a rebel Star Cruiser. And so I don't know if it actually was in the game or if it was just simply a reference to something else that happened in the extended canon, because Battlefront 2, I know, is one of the video games that is known for being canon, but the way that Bill Burr alludes to it, it's definitely it feels like a massacre and an unnecessary sacrifice and expenditure of just regular lives. So I just thought that was a cool little reference that I figured you would be able to pull more out of than me, since, I don't play video games unless it's Pokemon.
Yeah, no, that comes in good timing as well, since we literally just put up an episode this week on our top favorite Star Wars video games. We did a crossover between both of my podcasts, and we spoke about Battlefront. And what I will say is, while that battle doesn't ring a bell, the just blatant disregard for the life of the soldiers in the Battlefront game is one of the most fun parts of it. You just die and you respawn and you die, and there's soldiers dying left and right. So it feels like the Battle of Cinder was described. That feels like the gameplay. So that's pretty funny. But you know what, Dom? I feel like maybe we have an opportunity here to sort of touch upon the drop that Disney just put upon us and sort of get everyone's opinion real quick, because I think that does factor into the Mandalorian universe potentially. Yes,
definitely. So
yeah, you can take it away real quick if you want to go around.
Again, if you look, in case you guys missed the announcement this past weekend, Disney at their Investors Day meeting basically announced all their entire slate for their upcoming, all their new Marvel shows, all the new Disney animated shows, Pixar shows, all the new Disney Plus products. They've got a Chippendale Rescue Rangers reboot coming with John Mulaney and Andy Samberg. They're working on a lot of stuff right now. And obviously the big thing was there are a vast amount of Star Wars titles. Counted down, they've got 2 upcoming movies, Rogue Squadron, directed by Patty Jenkins, and the untitled Taika Waititi movie. The shows they have coming up are we have an Old Republic show, a Lando spinoff, a Cassian Andor spinoff, an animated C-3PO and R2-D2 show, an animated Japanese short show called Visions, a spinoff about the Rebels pilots, and a Ahsoka Tano spinoff, the famously rumored Obi-Wan spinoff, which will now feature Hayden Christensen, and an animated spinoff, The Bad Batch, from the Bad Batch clones were famously introduced in the last season of the Clone Wars earlier this year. That will all be going directly to Disney Plus. So it was a lot, to say the least, and it's definitely going to be interesting to see where this goes as far as affecting the future of The Mandalorian, the future of Star Wars versus the future of the Disney Plus streaming app, the future of Disney Plus, if you will. But yeah, I mean, you guys, Roy, I definitely know you heard about these announcements. Chris, you were texting me as these announcements were coming out, and you kept wanting to call me, but for whatever reason you couldn't. Pat, did you?
I was hanging out with the family,
Pat,
and it's rare to see him in 2020.
Pat, did you hear about these announcements?
My phone has basically been blowing up. I guess I watch a couple episodes of The Mandalorian, so now I'm a Disney fan, according to my phone. So
Right.
I basically have seen the announcements. My main take is that I understand the strategy. I think it's great to sort of excuse me. Take it away.
Pat, it's all good, man. We'll come back to you in a second. I hope you're okay over there. Roy, dude, what was your take? Because I saw your tweet, man, and you were like, is there such thing as too much Star Wars or something along the lines of that, right?
Yeah, I thought they were just like, that was like a wish list, dude. Like, here's what I want for Christmas, Mom and Dad. And you're like, I want everything, right? And you ask for too much stuff, and you're like, you're going to get like a couple of things, maybe one big thing if you're good, right? And they were like, nah, man, all of this, you can have whatever you want. Anything, take it. And I get it, because they're running the business, dude. I'm a business owner myself. Like, you want to make money. Star Wars costs $4 billion, bro. They got to make that cash. That's the whole reason they bought it. Dude, Dom, I'm with you. I want it to be good. I want whatever they put out, even if it's 50 million things or just one thing. Man, I hope it's good. CEO Bob Iger, he says in his book, Ride of a Lifetime, I just finished. You're welcome for the free plug, Bob. He says, if you're going to make something, or if you're in the business of making something, be in the business of making something great. That's Disney's thing. They want to do the best they can, but god damn, all of that stuff is going to be great. Dude, you can't make 3 films that are good. You can't make 2 side films that are good. You don't know how to make good Star Wars yet. So slow down. Put the training wheels back on the bike, all right? Mandalorian's good, but don't get cocky, kid, So, I get it. They got to make the money, but it's got to be good. Man, they announced too many things. They could have just shown the sizzle reel for a couple of them, and that would have been cool. Like Rogue One or Rogue Squadron, confirming that is neat. And more info on Taika Waititi, which is no info on that. That's a snoozer. He's not even done any work on that. The dude is just like, I don't know. I'll make a film. There's no info there. A lot of this stuff.
3 other movies. So
a lot of this stuff is just the text on the screen. It's coming.
Yeah.
I don't
We've
care
spoken about
then.
that before on the show too. It's a real issue with the new. Yeah, I agree.
Some of the stuff has, like the Ahsoka thing may be the most interesting, that she was in one episode, but still one episode of a live action series. I know Clone Wars, Rebels, but who is she to the average Mandalorian, not super fan?
More of her. We need to see more of her in this show. I want to see more of her thrown down in this show before we see a whole spinoff about her.
Yeah.
I was overwhelmed. To wrap it up, dude, I'm overwhelmed, man. It's too much, dude. Way too much.
Yeah.
That pisses me off. That's going to really piss me off if she only name dropped Thrawn just to set him up for her own show. That's going to be like, God damn it.
Yes, exactly.
That
Now,
would really piss me off.
I have thoughts too, but I think it's only right now that Pat seems to be okay. Thank God. Pat.
Yeah, we're so happy for you, Pat.
The announcement got me all choked up, and I had to visually show it here. Anyway, so
literally got choked up.
The main thing is,
Don't choke on your aspirations, Pat.
I think having all these different shows is going to the binge strategy that Disney has. And I think they're not in the business of making good Star Wars content for the fanboys. I think they're in the business of making good Disney content, that could be sort of in the vault for years and years and years, bring in new audience members and really sort of make their money over time. And so I don't necessarily think we're ever going to get like, the perfect Star Wars content. We're sort of going to have to live with the dark side of the whole Disney purchase, which is they're in the business to make their content and use the intellectual property that Lucas set up, for their own sort of purpose. And it's like I can't really say that I'm excited. A lot of the shows, like I guess the Acolyte was about the Sith, so that could be interesting.
Acolyte's going to be about the Old Republic. I know that.
Yeah. So, but the thing is, like, I think the timeline thing is going to be the thing that has me the most worried. Is that all the shows are all over the place. I'm a sort of a casual Star Wars fan. I like science fiction. I think Star Wars is more of the soft sort of like fantasy, science fiction. So I don't get into it as much as like hard science fiction. But like the fact is, like, I have no idea what's going on, and you're about to introduce like all these different shows that are taking me back in time, forward in time, what's present day. I have no idea. And so a casual fan like me is I don't know how many of these things I'm going to be on board watching. So I'm probably gonna, it's gonna come down to stylistically, what type of show are they creating? What kind of vibe are they doing inside the Star Wars universe? And I'm probably going to jump on those shows that sort of pick the genres that I'm most interested in. So this is like a Western genre. I think they said one was going to be a mystery. All of these different genres, and I think it's going to be the ones that appeal to me are going to be the ones that I probably dip into. It's like they're basically doing the Logan playbook, right? X-Men, different film genre. Here you go. Here's a different property. And I feel like that's what these different shows are, is sort of dipping into different genres with the same universe.
Totally, man. I agree with everything you guys are saying. So here's all I want to add. I just want to say that I really hope that Dom's prediction of this show only going one more season isn't true, because that really would feel pretty disrespectful to the first, outside of Rogue One, in my opinion, thing that they've gotten right. And they haven't even, like you guys said, fully gotten it right, but at least it feels like that Star Wars I grew up loving. So if this was just a conduit to be like, hey, subscribe to Disney Plus longer because we have all this other stuff coming, that's just like, why? What are we here for right now if that's the case? And just knowing that it's Disney, that could be the case. And that sucks because, I don't think we need to speak about how god-awful this new trilogy was that we just got. And the Solo movie, of course, was the ultimate just debacle. And we finally have things going in our way. They have a lot of work to do, as we pointed out. They have jetpack issues. They have, lunch break issues.
Yep, they got lunch break issues. They got helmet issues. They got all sorts of issues to fix.
But they're getting better.
They got filler issues.
Yeah, I'm with you guys. Slow your damn roll, Disney, and just relax, man. I don't think anyone's going anywhere anytime soon. I hope that's not the case.
Still own everything. Like, take a chill pill. Calm down.
People are not going to forget what Star Wars is.
Right. Remember when I want to hit the unsubscribe button a year after I just subscribed. Like, come on. But so, with that being said, before we get out of here, we always have to go around and give the episodes our ratings out of 5. This episode for me is another 4 out of 5 stars. Like, again, with the exception of episode 2, this season has not had a bad episode yet. So 4 out of 5 stars for me.
Yeah, I'm with you, Dom. It was fun. It offered something a little more exciting. I wish that it was more narrative driven, but I didn't hate my time with it like I did with episode 2. So 4 out of 5. Roy, man, what's your star rating, I suppose?
Well, I'm going to go 3 out of 5. Be kind of devil's advocate. You could skip it, If you didn't watch this one, you'd be totally fine for the next one. So that's kind of my only gripe, maybe a narrative issue there.
You can see that.
Fair enough. Yeah, Pat, dude.
DEFCON level 1.
Basically, yeah.
Oh, yeah, what DEFCON?
I've been judging it that way. It's like if we get down to DEFCON 1, we're watching the Great British Bake Off. But we're not there yet. So we can continue watching The Mandalorian. But I do think I agree with Roy that we're going to go from DEFCON 4. We're going to go back to DEFCON 3. I feel like this episode was good. It was enjoyable. I did take a little bit of an hour and a half break before I got to watch the full episode, right in the middle of it. And, so I don't think it was a terrible episode. I think there was a lot of great stuff in the episode. But again, I'm going to go with Roy and say you could probably have skipped this one. And for it being the second to last episode of the season, I really think you needed to hype up the final episode with this slot. And so the fact that it was sort of like we're talking about skipping it and going to the final, that to me says there's a problem with this episode's placement, and they could have done a little bit more to really hype up that final episode. And so I think we're going to be at DEFCON 3 going into the final episode. So I think this season better end with a spectacular ending. And hey, listen, I'm saying it. Thrawn should show up. I don't care about the whole spin-off.
I agree. Like, Matt, we are on the same page. The only thing that I have to say to that is, again, it's kind of a little bit of a step down when last season we arguably got like a 2-part season finale, which was like really, really awesome how that played out. And this season it's like, oh, last bit of filler before we get on to the main finale. It's like, come on, guys.
Like every finale should be a part 1-2. Every finale is a 1-2.
Disagree to an extent, because look at what we got with Game of Thrones. So people, with that being said, thank you for tuning in to yet another episode of Mando Watch. We have 1 week left, people. 1 week left. 1 episode left of The Mandalorian. Only 3 weeks left of this god-awful year. Thank God. Let's hope that we can get 2021 off to a better start. The only thing that I have to say before we get into like kind of where you can find us and everything is, people, next week, the day after the finale of the Mandalorian, we have arguably the event to end all events of the year, people. The first time we're trying this, we were inspired by the vast amounts of script readings that we saw on YouTube this year, people. We are happy to announce the newest segment of the Talkin TV podcast will commence next Saturday, the 19th, on the 1-year anniversary of The Rise of Skywalker. Our first episode of Strength of the Screenplay. That's right. We're 3 of us, as well as a lot of our other friends and comrades that we've made throughout our entire YouTube experience this year. We'll be reading the published but unfilmed version that was originally going to be Rise of Skywalker. That would be Colin Trevorrow's script, Duel of the Fates. We will be doing a live script reading of that next Saturday night, the 19th. It's going to be a lot of fun. It's going to be craziness abounds, and we hope that you all will join us. We've had so much fun on YouTube this year, and we hope to continue it for how many years, Chris?
Well, 12 seasons in a short film.
12 seasons in a short film. That's what we're doing.
I love that.
Oh, it's
man.
So good.
Yeah,
so good.
you know,
people, subscribe
you guys gave us life this year, and I think you guys know it, and I hope you know that we truly feel that way. This was YouTube finding this channel and growing this thing with all of you guys who honestly keep subscribing week to week. It's really humbling, and it means a lot to us. So please join us for this. This is for all of us to sort of celebrate this community that got us through a very dark time. It's our end of the year celebration. We hope to see you there. All are welcome, and it's going to be a lot of fun. So
it's going to be a blast. Again, Kristen and Mac of Mac Movie Reviews, Brando Critic, Guy at the Movies, Matt Teacher Movies, on YOLO Movies blog, the Basic Cinephile, this guy right here, Pat Huber, my friend Ian. So many different people are going to be involved in this thing. It's still ridiculous. I can't believe that we were actually able to get this many people involved, but it's going to be an absolute blast, and we can't wait to do it. We can't wait to present it to you guys. It's going to be a lot of fun, and it's fitting that we're doing this on the 1-year anniversary of The Rise of Skywalker.
Just a slap in the face. I love it.
Maybe we'll give a throwback replaying of the podcast episode that we recorded last year for that, because man, I listened back to that episode and I'm like, I don't think we actually like talked about anything having to do with that goddamn movie throughout the entire episode. It was great. But people, just because that's our big end of the year event doesn't mean that we're not still going to have podcast episodes going for you guys. We still have 3 more weeks worth of podcast episodes, and we've still got a couple more extra bit of content for you guys coming for the rest of the year. So make sure you stay tuned. You can always keep finding out and keep coming back and finding out about more of our content by clicking that subscribe button on our page. That's right. Look at how many subscribers we're up to now, people. People, look at all this content that we make.
You want me to scroll?
Just for you guys. Yes, please. Yeah. If you, oh my God. You're not supposed to say that. What's it called? If you click the subscribe button, if you click the if you click the subscribe button, if you click the bell next to the subscribe button, if you leave a comment, if you click that like button, you'll be doing us a tremendous favor in all respects and senses of the word. Again, if you allow us to grow, that allows us to give more content to you, the people overall. And and we want to keep doing that because we're having fun on YouTube, because it's what's keeping us alive right now. Literally.
I would say so. Yeah, and Spotify as well, all the audio platforms, guys. Find us on
all
there.
The audio platforms that we upload to every single week. Follow us on Facebook and Instagram at Talkin TV Podcast in order to keep up with regular updates overall. Pat, Roy, thank you guys once again for joining us.
Real quick before we get out of here, Roy has an incredible YouTube channel as well, which I highly recommend you guys go and subscribe to if you like Star Wars and amazing original music. Roy, why don't you tell everyone real quick about what it is you do here on YouTube before we jump out of here?
Yeah, well, thanks for having me, guys. I really like any opportunity to talk about Star Wars, you got to say yes to. So thank you, Dom, Pat, Chris, for having me. And if you want to hear me not talk, but sing about Star Wars, check out my YouTube channel. It's called RoyishGoodLooks. And man, it's like music videos of Star Wars with a song by me. If you like pop rock, pop punk, country, anything that's catchy and well produced, check these out. It's all Star Wars themed songs. So what's not to love? I even have a Star Wars Christmas song. You can put it on your Christmas playlist. It's called Christmas on Tatooine. Come on.
Nice,
they might be in the middle of a desert. They still got to celebrate the holidays, right? So
we got to celebrate Life Day.
And I got to say, Roy, This Is the Way has been stuck in my head since it came out, 3 weeks ago? You're killing it, man. I love it,
Thank
dude.
you, man. I appreciate
congrats on all the success, and thank you again for joining us, dude. It was a blast.
Yeah, absolutely.
My pleasure.
Pat, anything you want to leave the people with before we jump out of here?
No, I'm just gonna get another glass of water and hopefully
don't choke on it this time.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, guys, thank you so much. And Dom, do you have a final message for the people here tonight?
Watch more fucking movies, and in this case, people, you're definitely gonna be watching more Disney over the next 20 years or so. We'll see you guys next time on the last episode of Mando Watch.
Yeah.